Hey guys, in today's vlog, I'm going to reveal 5 commonly made mixing mistakes that I see so many people doing. And some of you out there might be making these mix mistakes, but the good news is they're easy to correct, and when you do, your mixes are going to sound better. You ready? Let's go. Okay, so mix mistake number 1 is not envisioning the final mix in your head before you start mixing. I see a lot of guys, they load up the mix, and they just start tweaking stuff and putting their favorite EQ and stuff, and they just start going without a purpose. And what is the purpose? The purpose is to get to a final destination. So what I do is I picture, after listening to the raw tracks and trying to understand, what the song is about, I picture the final mix in my head. I picture, whether it, is the vocal going to be dry? Is it going to be wet? If it's going to be wet, is it the type of song that's going to require a large reverb or some smaller reverbs or no reverbs? Or is it going to be delays? Are the drums going to be laid back? Are they going to be more prominent? Are the guitars going to be wide? Are they going to be, narrow? All this stuff I start pre-planning because I'm hearing the final mix in my head before I ever touch a fader or an EQ or a compressor. It's all happening here first. So for instance, here's a mix that comes with the Everything bundle. This is my rock mix course. So let's take a listen to this final portion of the verse. So here you have a slightly upfront vocal. You've got a lot of depth in the drums. You can tell, the guitars have a certain space to them. All of that stuff I heard in my head. Now here's what the dry tracks sound like. So this is what I listened to first. So you can see, that as soon as I heard those tracks, I started to piece together in my mind, what does this band, what does this producer want for a final sound? And once I had it in my head, it was so much easier to start tweaking. Now I had a purpose. I could start EQing stuff. I could start setting up my reverbs and delays. I could start, getting my balances because I all had it up in here. I mean, it's like you don't get into a car and start driving. You have to have a destination. And once you have that destination, you have to map out your route, and then the ride is much easier. Mix mistake number 2 is focusing too much on the micro and not enough on the macro. What I mean by that is, you start focusing on small elements of the mix. Maybe it's, this one guitar part, or just the drums, or how just the vocal is, or you start, micromanaging things and not referencing enough in context of the whole mix, and not thinking about how everything relates to the final mix sound. Now, one of my biggest mistakes of doing this was focusing so much on having punchy drums, because you guys know I love drums, that, things would suffer in the mix. The mix wouldn't sound full because I'd want so much dynamics in these punchy drum hits. And it took me a while to overcome that, to really say, how is this, this song isn't just about drums, it's a whole mix, it's everything. So, I had to overcome that by thinking more in the macro. Now that ties into mixing mistake number 3, which is soloing. I see some guys solo way too much. They over solo. Now soloing is not a problem, but the issue with soloing is when you start to tweak something while it's soloed and you really fine tune it and make it sound good when it's soloed, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to sound good in the whole mix. And I'll give you an example here. Take a listen to this kick. That doesn't sound that great. It's not a great sounding kick. If you were just trying to get a great kick sound, I'd probably EQ more lows than that. I'd take some of that kind of weird clicky thing out of there. But watch what happens when you combine it, with these other 2 kicks and the overheads. Listen to this. So now it's, a piece of a larger puzzle, and it sounds great. You can do the same thing with the snare here. So if I just solo, let's say the snare top. Now, soloed, it's kind of lacking some bottom end. I'd probably crank more bottom and get it fatter. But again, you mix it with the snare sample and the overheads and this thing called drum squash, and listen to the snare now. So again, in the whole context, it's really something more. So, soloing is not something I say don't do. I solo quite a bit, but always solo and unsolo so you can listen in the context of the mix. Mix mistake number 4. Have some reference mixes. No one is too good to at least check a reference mix to recalibrate their ears. All right, I always do this. If I'm away from my mix desk for too long and I come back here, sometimes I just need to recalibrate how my ears are hearing the frequency response. If I come back here sometimes and I don't recalibrate with the reference mix, I might be mixing too much sub-low or not enough sub-low, or my upper mid range for the room might be a little off, so I might be pushing too much upper mids and the mix might end up harsh. As soon as I listen to my reference mix, in 20 seconds, boom, I'm back. I know exactly where to, put things, in terms of frequency response, in terms of compression. It really gets me centered. So always have a reference mix, and it cannot hurt to take 20 seconds to listen to that ref mix that is a perfect sounding mix in your room. And that leads me to mix mistake number 5. Don't spend money on anything studio related until you have the ultimate monitor system, room acoustics, and overall your room is perfectly tuned so that you can comfortably mix without having to question yourself. We've all done that dreaded, it sounds great in the studio, you bring it out to your car and it sounds like absolute crap. That should not happen, okay? And the reason that doesn't happen for me is because I have a tuned room, I know these monitors, I have, obviously this is a professional studio, I have lots of, room acoustics, everything's tuned, and by the way, I endorse the use of any of the room tuning kits. You've got the IK ARC, you've got the Sonar Works, there's a few others, but room tuning kits can really help you overcome some bad rooms, because obviously you can't all have the experience of mixing in a professional room. So definitely make sure you spend first your money on great speakers, great room acoustics, and possibly room tuning kits. So I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know what you think in the comments. Hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time.